Have you ever experienced workplace injustice stories where doing the right thing somehow cost you everything? If you've been through something similar, share your experience in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss more real stories like this. Welcome back, everyone. Today's story is one that still stings to tell, and if there's a lesson in it, it's about how quickly loyalty can be thrown away. My name is Laura Bennett, and for 5 years, I was the kind of employee every manager claimed to want. I showed up early, stayed late, covered extra shifts, and never complained. Even when others called in sick, I was the one they relied on to keep things moving. I believed that dedication mattered. I believed that if you gave a company your best, they would stand by you when life happened. I was wrong. That morning started like any other. I packed my bag, checked my phone for emails, and planned out the day. Then my son woke up burning with fever, his face flushed and eyes glassy. He could barely sit up, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. I called my supervisor, explained everything, and told her I needed just one day to care for him. She sounded calm. Understanding, even. "Take care of your child," she said. "We'll manage." I thanked her, relieved. I spent the entire day beside my son, watching his temperature, making soup, and hoping he'd feel better by morning. I truly believed everything would be fine when I returned. I had no idea that single decision had already sealed my fate. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, the way I always did on workdays. My son's fever had dropped overnight, and he was finally sleeping peacefully. I remember standing by his bed for a moment, feeling grateful that I'd made the right choice by staying home. I told myself I'd explain everything when I got to the office, maybe even bring in a doctor's note to be safe. I checked my phone while making coffee, expecting the usual stream of overnight emails. Instead, I saw one new message from Human Resources. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. The subject line was cold and simple: employment status update. I tapped it open, thinking it might be a schedule change or some kind of policy reminder. But the words on the screen didn't make sense at first. They felt too formal, too distant, like they were meant for someone else. Effective immediately, your employment has been terminated due to unauthorized absence and failure to meet attendance expectations. I read it 3 times, waiting for the meaning to change. Unauthorized absence? I had called. I had spoken directly to my supervisor. She told me to take care of my child. I even remembered the exact tone in her voice, calm and reassuring. There was no warning, no meeting, no chance to explain. Just a single email, sent at 7:12 a.m., ending 5 years of loyalty. My hands started to shake. I dialed my supervisor's number immediately, hoping there had been some mistake. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I tried calling again and again until the sound of my own desperation started to make me feel sick. Each call went straight to voicemail. No answer. No message back. It was like I had been erased overnight. I quickly opened my work email app to respond to the HR message, but my password didn't work anymore. I tried twice more, slower this time, certain I had typed it wrong. Still nothing. Access denied. That's when the reality began to settle in. They hadn't just sent an email. They had already shut me out completely. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone, the coffee in front of me going cold. My son shuffled into the room, wrapped in his blanket, his voice still hoarse as he asked if I was going to work. I forced a smile and told him I was taking the day off again. I didn't know how to explain that I might not be going back at all. After a few minutes, anger started to replace the shock. I opened my call history and dialed the main office number. The receptionist picked up, cheerful as always. "Good morning, this is the front desk." "Hi, it's Laura Bennett," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to speak to my supervisor. It's urgent." There was a pause. A long one. Then her tone shifted, careful and distant. "I'm sorry, she's not available right now." I tightened my grip on the phone, sensing something in the receptionist's voice that didn't sit right with me. She sounded polite, but there was a strange hesitation, like she was choosing every word carefully. "Okay, when will she be available?" I asked. Another pause. "I'm not sure," she replied. "She's in meetings most of the day." That didn't make sense. My supervisor rarely spent an entire day in meetings, especially not without warning. I could feel frustration building in my chest. Can you let her know I called? It's about the email I received this morning, I said. Silence again. Then she cleared her throat. Laura, I think you should speak directly with HR. My heart sank. I tried replying, but I can't access my email anymore. My login isn't working. Oh, she said softly, almost like she already knew. In that case, you can call the HR office line. She gave me the number, and I wrote it down even though my hand was trembling. Before hanging up, I asked one more question. Did my supervisor say anything about me yesterday? About me calling in? The hesitation returned, heavier this time. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I'm not really allowed to discuss that. The call ended, and I just sat there, staring at the number I'd written. It felt like everyone already knew something I didn't. I took a deep breath and dialed HR, hoping there had been a misunderstanding. But deep down, I was starting to feel like this wasn't a mistake at all. A woman from HR answered on the third ring, her voice clipped and professional. I introduced myself, explained that I'd received a termination email, and told her there had to be some kind of error. I reminded her that I had called in the day before to report that I needed to care for my sick child. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she spoke slowly, like she had repeated the same explanation many times before. According to our records, you were marked absent without prior approval, she said. Your supervisor noted that you did not follow the required call-in procedure. My heart dropped. That's not true, I said quickly. I spoke to her directly. She told me to take the day and focus on my child. There was a brief silence, followed by the soft tapping of keyboard keys. I understand this is upsetting, she replied, her tone still distant. However, the report states that you sent a last-minute text message and did not receive formal authorization for the absence. A text message? I felt heat rise to my face. I didn't send a text, I said firmly. I called her. We spoke for nearly 5 minutes. More typing. Then a sigh. Well, the documentation we have indicates otherwise, she said. And given your attendance record over the past few months, management made the decision to proceed with termination. That stopped me cold. My attendance record? I had barely missed a single day in 5 years. Something was very, very wrong. For a moment, I couldn't even respond. I just sat there, staring at the wall as her words echoed in my head. Attendance record over the past few months. It didn't make sense. I had taken exactly 2 sick days in the last year, both with proper notice. I stayed late more times than I could count. I even came in on weekends when we were short-staffed. My record wasn't bad. It was one of the best. I think there's a mistake, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay calm. Can you tell me exactly what issues you're seeing? There was another pause, followed by more typing. I'm seeing multiple instances of tardiness and early departures, she replied. Also, 2 undocumented absences last quarter. I felt like the floor had shifted beneath me. That's impossible, I said. I don't leave early. I barely even take lunch breaks. She didn't argue, but she didn't sound convinced either. All I can tell you is what's documented in the system, she said. These notes were submitted by your direct supervisor. The words hit harder than the termination itself. Submitted by your direct supervisor. The same person who had thanked me just last week for staying late to finish a project. The same person who had told me, in a calm voice, to take care of my child. I swallowed hard. Can I come in and talk to someone? I just want to understand what happened. There was a brief hesitation before she answered. You can schedule a meeting, she said. But I can't guarantee any changes will be made. We set the meeting for the following morning at 10. The HR representative sounded polite, but her tone made it clear she didn't expect anything to come from it. To her, this was already a closed case. But for me, it was everything. That entire day felt unreal. I went through the motions at home, making sure my son rested, giving him medicine, checking his temperature, but my mind kept drifting back to the conversation. Every detail replayed over and over. Multiple tardiness reports. Undocumented absences. None of it was true. By the afternoon, the shock had fully turned into something sharper. I opened my personal laptop and started digging through old messages and emails I'd saved. I found thank you notes from coworkers, screenshots of schedule changes, and reminders from my supervisor asking me to stay late. Proof that I was reliable. Proof that I showed up. Then I checked my phone records. I scrolled to the previous day and found the call. There it was. Outgoing call. 5 minutes and 11 seconds long. Right at the time I had phoned her to explain about my son. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. If she told HR I had only sent a text, then she had lied. And not just a small lie. A lie that cost me my job. For the first time, a new thought crept into my mind, one that made my chest tighten. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone had deliberately set this up. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying that phone call from the day before. I could hear her voice clearly, calm and understanding. There was no confusion. No hesitation. She had told me in plain words to stay home and take care of my child. Yet somehow, that conversation had vanished from the official story. Early the next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and began organizing everything I could find. I took screenshots of the call log showing the exact time and duration. I searched through my personal email for anything that showed my work ethic. Performance reviews, thank you messages, schedule confirmations. I gathered it all. If they wanted documentation, I would give it to them. But as I went through old messages, something started to bother me. A few weeks earlier, my supervisor had begun acting differently. At first, it was subtle. Shorter responses. Less eye contact. Meetings canceled at the last minute. I had brushed it off at the time, assuming she was just stressed. Now it felt different. I remembered one afternoon when I overheard her talking to someone in her office. My name came up, followed by a long pause, and then the door quickly shut when she realized I was nearby. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Now, every small moment felt like a clue I had missed. I packed my folder with printed records, screenshots, and notes, determined to walk into that meeting prepared. Because if this was deliberate, I was going to find out why. I arrived at the office building 10 minutes early, my stomach twisted into knots. Walking through those doors felt strange, like I was stepping into a place that no longer belonged to me. A security guard I recognized gave me a quick nod, but his smile faded when he saw the visitor badge I had to wear. I had never needed one before. The HR office was on the second floor. When I reached the reception area, the same woman I had spoken to on the phone greeted me with a tight, polite smile. She asked me to wait, then disappeared behind a glass door. I sat down and looked around. Everything felt colder than I remembered. People walked past without making eye contact. A few coworkers spotted me from a distance, then quickly turned away, pretending they hadn't seen me at all. It was like I had already become a problem they didn't want to be associated with. After a few minutes, the HR representative came out and motioned for me to follow her. She led me into a small meeting room with a plain table and 2 chairs. A folder sat neatly in the center. "Thank you for coming, Laura," she said, her voice neutral. "We'll keep this brief." Brief. That word hit me harder than I expected. I sat down and placed my own folder on the table, sliding out the first printed page. "I brought proof that I called my supervisor," I said. "And records showing I haven't missed work the way your report claims." For the first time, her expression shifted slightly. She hadn't expected me to come prepared. The HR representative sat across from me, her hands folded neatly on the table as I slid the printed screenshots toward her. For a moment, she didn't touch them. Her eyes stayed on my face, studying me carefully, as if trying to decide how much of this she wanted to deal with. "That's the call log from my phone," I explained, pointing to the time and duration. 5 minutes and 11 seconds. I spoke to my supervisor directly. I didn't send a text. She finally reached forward and picked up the page. Her eyes scanned it quickly, then moved to the next document. I watched her expression shift ever so slightly. Not shock. Not concern. Just a hint of something more complicated. "This confirms that a call was made," she said slowly. "But it doesn't confirm the content of the conversation." I felt my jaw tighten. "So her word counts more than proof that I actually called?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened the folder in front of her and pulled out a printed report. She turned it so I could see it. At the top was my name. Below that was a list of dates. Late arrival. Early departure. Unexcused absence. Over and over again. My chest tightened as I scanned the list. Some of the dates made no sense. I remembered working full shifts on those exact days. One of them was even during a week I stayed late every night to help finish a project. This is wrong, I said quietly. Every bit of this is wrong. She leaned back slightly, watching me as I stared at the report. I began pointing at specific dates, my finger moving faster as the frustration built. On this day, I stayed until almost 7, I said. My team lead thanked me for helping close out the system. And here, this one. I was covering for someone who called in sick. I looked up at her. You can check the security logs. The entry records. I was there. For the first time, she didn't respond immediately. Her eyes moved back down to the papers, and I could see her reading more carefully now. These reports were submitted weekly by your supervisor, she said at last. They're part of the official documentation used to track performance and attendance. My heart sank deeper. Weekly. That meant this hadn't happened all at once. It had been building quietly, piece by piece, behind my back. I was never warned, I said. No one spoke to me about any of this. No write-ups. No meetings. Nothing. She nodded slowly, like she couldn't argue with that part. That is unusual, she admitted. The room went quiet for a moment. Then I took out another paper from my folder and slid it toward her. It was a printed email from just 2 weeks earlier. My supervisor had written it herself, thanking me for my reliability and consistent presence during a busy period. Her eyes paused on the date. It was listed right in the middle of the supposed attendance issues. And suddenly, the story they were telling didn't line up at all. The HR representative read the email twice before setting it down. The room felt heavier now, the silence stretching longer than before. I could see the shift in her posture. She wasn't just following a script anymore. She was thinking. This email is from your supervisor, she asked, even though the name was clearly printed at the bottom. Yes, I replied. She sent it to me after we finished that late project. She thanked me for being dependable and consistent. Her fingers tapped lightly against the table as she looked between the email and the attendance report. The two stories didn't match. Not even close. If I was constantly late and leaving early, I continued, my voice steadier now, why would she be praising my reliability at the same time? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled the attendance report closer, scanning through the dates again. I could almost see the moment the doubt started settling in. I can't make any conclusions right now, she said carefully. But I agree that this information raises questions. Questions. That was more than I had gotten all morning. I leaned forward slightly. Can we speak to her? I asked. Right now. I just want to understand why she told you I only sent a text when I clearly called. She hesitated, her expression tightening again. She's not available today, she said. She called in sick this morning. Sick. The word hit me like a punch. For a second, I didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. The timing felt almost too perfect. The one person who could explain everything just happened to be out sick on the exact day I came in to question the report. That's convenient, I said before I could stop myself. The HR representative didn't react, but her eyes flickered for a moment. She knew it sounded strange too. When will she be back? I asked. She didn't give a specific date, she replied. Just said she wouldn't be in for a few days. A few days. That meant more waiting. More uncertainty. More time for things to stay exactly as they were. I gathered my papers slowly, trying to keep my thoughts organized. I didn't want to walk out of that room without something concrete. So what happens now? I asked. She folded her hands again, her voice returning to its careful, measured tone. I'll need time to review everything you've brought in, she said. I'll also need to look into the discrepancies between the attendance reports and the email you showed me. Discrepancies. It wasn't a defense anymore. It was an acknowledgement. Does that mean the termination could be reconsidered? I asked. She paused before answering. I'm not promising anything, she said. But I can say this situation may require further investigation. For the first time since that email arrived, I felt a small sense of relief. Someone was finally starting to see that something wasn't right. I left the building with a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. I wasn't rehired. I didn't have any promises. But for the first time, someone inside that company had admitted that something didn't add up. As I stepped outside, the familiar parking lot felt different, like I was looking at a place that had quietly turned its back on me. I sat in my car for a few minutes, hands resting on the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed just as I was about to start the engine. It was a message from a coworker named Anita. "Hey, I saw you come in today. Are you okay?" I heard something happened. I stared at the screen for a moment. Anita and I had worked side by side for nearly 3 years. She wasn't the type to pry, which meant if she was reaching out, something had already spread through the office. I typed back carefully. "I was fired yesterday morning." Still trying to understand why. The reply came almost immediately. "What? That makes no sense. Everyone knows you're the most consistent person here." My chest tightened as I read it. Then another message popped up. "Can we talk? I think there's something you should know." I froze. My mind raced through possibilities. I hadn't told anyone the details yet. There was no way she could know what was really happening. Unless something had been said inside the office. Something I wasn't meant to hear. We agreed to meet at a small cafe not far from the office later that afternoon. I arrived early, choosing a table in the corner where we could talk without being overheard. My hands wouldn't stop fidgeting as I waited. When Anita walked in, she looked nervous. Not just concerned. Actually nervous. She spotted me, gave a small wave, and hurried over. "Laura," she said softly as she sat down. "I'm so sorry. None of this makes sense." I managed a small smile. "I'm still trying to figure it out." She glanced around before leaning closer. "People started talking yesterday," she said quietly. "Right after you called in." My stomach dropped. What were they saying? She hesitated, like she was deciding how much to share. "Your supervisor was in the break room with one of the managers." I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard your name. "She said you were becoming unreliable. That you'd been leaving early and calling off too much." I felt a cold wave move through me. "That's not true," I said. "I know," Anita replied quickly. That's why it felt strange. Everyone was confused. "You're the one people depend on." She paused again, her voice dropping even lower. "But that's not the worst part." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Anita swallowed hard before answering. "I heard her say they needed a reason to make a change soon." For a moment, the noise of the cafe seemed to disappear. I could hear Anita's words echoing in my head, each one landing heavier than the last. A reason to make a change. I leaned back slowly, trying to process what she had just said. "Did she say anything else?" I asked. Anita nodded, her fingers wrapped tightly around her cup. "One of the managers asked if there was already documentation. She said she'd been keeping track for a while." My heart started pounding. Keeping track. That explained the false attendance reports, the weekly submissions, the quiet buildup I never knew about. "I don't understand," I said. "Why would she do that? I never had any problems with her." Anita looked down for a moment before answering. "There were rumors," she said, "about budget cuts, about restructuring. People were worried some positions might be eliminated." I felt a chill run through me. And someone mentioned that newer hires were cheaper," she continued carefully. "Lower salaries. Less benefits." The realization hit me hard. I had been there for 5 years. My pay had increased with each review. My benefits were solid. I was experienced. And expensive. "So they needed a reason," I said quietly. Anita met my eyes. "I don't know for sure," she said. "But it sounded like they were building a case. A case against me." Before I even knew I was being judged. We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of it settling in. I stared at the table, replaying the past few months in my mind. Every canceled meeting. Every strange look. Every moment I had dismissed as stress or coincidence. It all felt different now. "They already have someone new," Anita said suddenly. I looked up. "What?" She hesitated. "A new girl started last week." She's been shadowing your role. They told everyone she was just extra help. My chest tightened. Last week. That meant she was already there before I called in to care for my son. Before any of this happened. They were preparing to replace me, I said slowly. Anita didn't argue. I didn't want to believe it, she said. But after what I heard yesterday, it felt planned. I thought about the attendance reports. The fake tardiness. The sudden termination over one day off. It wasn't about that day at all. It was about creating a paper trail. A reason. Did anyone question it? I asked. People were confused, Anita said. But no one wanted to get involved. Everyone's scared of losing their own job. I nodded slowly. I couldn't blame them. Fear had a way of keeping people quiet. But inside me, something had shifted. This wasn't just unfair anymore. This was deliberate. That night, I spread everything across the kitchen table again. The call logs. The printed emails. The attendance report. Now I added something new to the pile, Anita's words, still echoing clearly in my mind. They needed a reason. The more I thought about it, the more everything started to line up. The sudden shift in my supervisor's attitude. The quiet documentation I never saw. The new hire already shadowing my role before I was even gone. This had been building for months. I opened my laptop and started writing down every detail I could remember. Dates when I stayed late. Days I covered shifts. Projects I finished under pressure. I was determined to create my own timeline, one that told the truth. As I worked, I remembered something else. A message from a few months back. My supervisor had asked me to clock out early one afternoon because the system was down. I didn't think much of it at the time. I did what she said and went home. What if she marked that as an early departure? My stomach turned. If she had done that repeatedly, she could make it look like I left early on my own. I kept digging through old texts and found the message. The date matched one of the early departure marks on the report. Proof. For the first time, this didn't feel hopeless anymore. If she had been building a false record, then there had to be more cracks in her story. And I was starting to find them. The next morning, I called the HR representative again. My voice felt steadier this time. I explained that I had found additional messages that could prove some of the early departures listed on the report were actually instructions from my supervisor. She listened carefully, asking me to email everything to her personal work address since my company account was still locked. Within an hour, I sent screenshots, timestamps, and written explanations for each one. By the afternoon, she called me back. I've reviewed what you sent, she said. And I have to admit, some of these entries are concerning. Concerning. That word meant progress. There are several dates where your supervisor marked early departure, she continued, but your messages suggest she told you to leave. Yes, I said quickly. I never chose to leave early on my own. She was quiet for a moment. I'm going to need to escalate this, she said finally. There may be a larger issue with how these reports were handled. My heart began to race. Does that mean my termination might be reversed? I asked. I can't promise that yet, she replied. But I can say this is becoming more serious than a standard attendance issue. More serious. After we hung up, I sat in silence, letting it sink in. For the first time since that email arrived, it felt like the truth was starting to push its way to the surface. 2 days passed without any updates, and the waiting began to wear on me. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. I tried to focus on normal life, on taking care of my son and keeping the house in order, but my mind kept drifting back to that office and the growing stack of evidence. On the third morning, the HR representative finally called. Her tone was different this time. Less formal. More serious. Laura, I wanted to let you know that we've begun a full internal review, she said. I sat up straighter. What does that mean exactly? It means we're re-examining the attendance records submitted over the past 6 months, she explained. And we're comparing them against security logs and shift data. My chest tightened. So you can see when I actually entered and left the building? Yes, she said. And there are inconsistencies. That single word sent a rush of relief through me. Inconsistencies how? I asked carefully. She hesitated, like she was choosing her words. There are several dates where the report claims you arrived late, she said, but the security records show you were in the building before your shift started. I closed my eyes for a moment. Finally. Proof that didn't just come from me. We're still reviewing everything, she added. But I wanted you to know your concerns are being taken seriously. When the call ended, I sat there in silence, my hands trembling. The story that had been written about me was starting to fall apart. Later that same afternoon, Anita called me, her voice urgent. Something's happening, she said. People are talking again. My stomach tightened. About what? About the security logs, she replied. Management pulled records this morning. They've been asking questions about attendance reports. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse quickening. So they know? I think so, she said. Your supervisor came in today and she looked shaken. She went straight into a meeting with senior management. That was the first time I'd heard she was back. Did anyone say what it was about? I asked. No, Anita said. But she didn't come out for almost 2 hours. I pictured that closed office door. The same door that used to shut whenever I walked by. What happened after? I asked. When she finally came out, she looked angry. Anita continued. She wasn't talking to anyone. Just grabbed her things and left early. Left early. The words felt almost ironic. Do you think they know she lied? I asked quietly. Anita paused. I don't know for sure, she admitted. But something's definitely changing. People are nervous. Even the managers. After we hung up, I stared at the wall for a long time. For months, I had been the one quietly blamed. Now, for the first time, the pressure was shifting in another direction. The call from HR came the next morning, earlier than I expected. I answered on the first ring, my heart already racing. Laura, the representative said, her voice firm but controlled. We've completed most of the review. I held my breath. We compared your supervisor's attendance reports against security badge records, shift schedules, and internal emails. There are multiple discrepancies. My hand tightened around the phone. How many? I asked quietly. Enough to raise serious concerns about the accuracy of the documentation, she replied. That was all she needed to say. For months, someone had been quietly building a false record about me. Now, piece by piece, it was being pulled apart. There's something else, she continued. Several early departure entries appear to have been logged on days where system messages show you were asked to leave early due to low activity or technical issues. Exactly what I had suspected. So she knew I wasn't leaving on my own, I said. There was a pause before she answered. It appears that way. The words settled over me slowly. I wasn't just unlucky. I wasn't careless. I had been set up. We're scheduling a formal meeting with senior management tomorrow, she added. We'd like you to attend. My pulse jumped. What for? To discuss your termination and the findings so far. When the call ended, I sat in silence, trying to steady myself. This was no longer just about proving I wasn't at fault. This was about something much bigger. The next day, I walked back into the office building, my visitor badge clipped to my shirt again. But this time, it felt different. I wasn't walking in confused or desperate. I was walking in with answers. The meeting room was larger than the one I'd sat in before. 3 people were already inside when I entered. The HR representative, a senior manager I recognized, and another executive I had only seen in passing. They all stood as I walked in. Thank you for coming, Laura, the senior manager said, motioning for me to sit. There was a seriousness in his voice I had never heard before. Once I was seated, he folded his hands on the table. We want to start by acknowledging that this situation has raised significant concerns, he said. The information uncovered during our review does not align with the termination decision that was made. My heart began to pound. He slid a document across the table toward me. It was a summary of the investigation findings. Dates highlighted. Notes marked. Security records attached. Evidence. Based on what we've found so far, he continued, there is clear indication that the attendance reports submitted about you were inaccurate. I looked up slowly. And my supervisor? I asked. The 3 of them exchanged a glance. She is currently under internal investigation, he said. For the first time since that morning I was fired, I felt something shift completely. The truth wasn't just coming out. It was finally being recognized. The room was completely silent after he said it. Under internal investigation. I let those words sink in, trying to understand what they meant for me, for my job, and for everything that had happened over the past few weeks. The senior manager leaned forward slightly, his tone steady. "We want to be transparent with you," he said. "Based on the discrepancies we've uncovered, your termination should not have happened the way it did." My chest tightened. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. He glanced at the HR representative before answering. "We are prepared to offer you immediate reinstatement to your position," he said, "with full back pay for the time you've been away." For a moment, I couldn't speak. All the stress, the anger, the sleepless nights, suddenly it was like the weight shifted. I had fought so hard just to be heard, and now they were offering to undo it all. But something inside me didn't feel the relief I expected. Instead, I felt clarity. "And my supervisor?" I asked again. The executive spoke this time. "She has been suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. The evidence suggests the reports were intentionally misrepresented." Intentionally. I nodded slowly, absorbing everything. I could go back, sit at the same desk, walk the same halls, pretend none of this happened. But I knew it had, and I knew I would never see that place the same way again. I took a deep breath before answering them. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully. "And I'm grateful that the truth finally came out." The three of them watched me closely, waiting. "But I don't think I can come back." The words felt strange, but also right. For 5 years, I had given that job everything. I showed up early, stayed late, covered shifts, and trusted that loyalty meant something. And all it took was one person quietly writing things down that weren't true to tear it all apart. Even if they fixed it now, the damage had already been done. The senior manager nodded slowly, like he understood. "We respect that," he said. "The offer will remain open if you change your mind." I thanked them, gathered my folder, and stood up. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. A few days later, Anita called to tell me the investigation had concluded. My supervisor was terminated. The reports she had submitted were proven false. Others had come forward too, sharing similar experiences they'd been too afraid to mention before. In the end, I lost a job. But I found something more important. I found out how strong I really was when someone tried to take everything from me. And I made a promise to myself that day no workplace would ever have that kind of power over my life again.